Hello there.
Hello there.
And welcome to another episode of What If Qui-Gon Didn't Die? My name's Jamie,
And I'm Sean.
and in this week's episode, we're gonna ask the question: what if the Death Star plans were never recovered from Scarif?
And it takes us to one of our most favourite films
Yes.
of all time.
Yeah, we are both big fans of Rogue One.
Yeah. Avid lovers of that film, yeah.
I think it hits all the nostalgia parts that we want. It's just right there.
Considering the age of the film, it touches all the points. You know, it's got the belief in the Force.
Mm-hmm.
It's got the sassy droid. It's got the desperate attempt to, complete the mission.
Yeah.
And then obviously the end scene is just magnifique. But all of that comes together for me because it's like I've said before, Star Wars is a massive storyline, but all of the films for me are just sort of glossing over what's happening in the middle. Like the middle is obviously Palpatine's a bad guy and he's going to do all this bad stuff, but all of the films, Luke on Tatooine, it's not a main storyline.
No.
It's like a side quest. But all of these films sort of just really do flow around the bigger picture, but they just somehow draw in the bigger picture itself into their films. I think Rogue One is a really good example of, it doesn't, when you watch episode 4, it doesn't matter how they got the plans then, but watching Rogue One, you realise just how dangerous
it was a dangerous thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. We always talk about Rogue One, but it's a special kind of film, that, to us.
Well, in this episode, we're gonna look into. It's going to be a bit of a crossover between Rogue One and Episode 4 because we're gonna explore the idea that they failed either to get onto Scarif or failed when they got to Scarif.
Yes.
And they never broadcast the plans. Crucially, in those plans it was
the blueprint with
it was the blueprint that Jen Erso's dad.
Yeah, he put in there as a safeguard, didn't he?
He did, yeah. The little exhaust port.
Yeah.
Which if you perfectly fire a missile into, will destroy.
It at a 90-degree angle as it gets sucked into the tube.
Which is an exhaust port, so should be pushing out, but okay.
Yeah, but they'll still go in, but yeah, and Mads Mikkelsen, by the way.
Yeah, amazing.
Brilliant actor. Yeah, loved them sort of opening scenes there.
Yeah, really good.
With the things, but yeah, sorry, back to what you were saying. Yeah, so they he put them in the plans as a safeguard, didn't he?
Yes.
Because he knew what they were trying to build.
He knew how dangerous the whole thing was.
Yeah.
He knew it was a force for evil, and there was no good going to come from this Death Star.
No. And it's actually massive as well. If you think about how actual big the Death Star was when it sucked in the Millennium Falcon, like it's a pinprick.
And it's actually quite a small. It is small in comparison to the second
Death Star, and then Starkiller Base, which is just a moon with a
basically,
laser in its core. Yeah. You think they would have learned by now not to just build circle laser firers. But yeah, so it's a really good question because I don't think it would change the outcome of how Episode 4 goes. He would still have Leia. He would still board the ship. He would still think they had the plans.
Yeah. Because
there's no way for Vader to know that they haven't got the plans.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he would still lock her away. And so Luke and Han and and Ben Kenobi and all of that Episode 4 would still flow quite nicely, I think.
Oh, so are you suggesting that they got onto Scarif?
And maybe they didn't send the plans up, but Vader still believes that they did.
Yeah.
Hence boarding the ship.
Because that's why he boarded, wasn't it?
That's why he boarded, because he knew he thought the plans were sent up there. Because he makes out that he thinks Leia's got the plans. He says that he knows.
Yeah.
But of course, he doesn't actually know.
No,
that his old droid from the Clone Wars is hiding it in his little
and he didn't recognise him.
ROM, his little ROM packet. R2.
Yeah,
he's like, I'll just let this dude do it because I love him really all along. But yeah, so I'm not sure if it would change that, because obviously Luke and Han would still go and save Leia, and you know, the only thing that sparks that is Leia asking for help from Ben.
Yes.
That's why it sort of drives Luke going there. So maybe she would still send that message for help, but it would just wouldn't have the plans for the Death Star there. Maybe she's saying, we couldn't get the plans, I really need your help. So maybe episode 4 would still flow in kind of the same respect, but
I think a certain part of the storyline, certain aspects of it would still flow. That part would still make sense.
Yeah.
Because Luke would still get into trouble. Obi-Wan would still find him.
Yeah.
Because that happens before the message is revealed. So that is always going to happen.
Because
that's
3PO
a canon event.
Yeah, 3PO and R2 still get into the escape pod.
Yeah.
But it's like I say, Leia wouldn't have had to put the plans in R2. She could have just recorded a help SOS message and gone, oh, we're over Tatooine. Funny that. Boff. See you later, lads. Go and find him. You know, the bloke you spent, all of the Clone Wars fighting next to. But he won't recognise you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so maybe little aspects of episode 4 would still flow quite nicely. Nothing would have to change much.
Yeah, so in that respect, Luke and Obi-Wan would still get together.
Yeah.
If they got the message for help,
yeah,
they would then still need to find a ship. They'd still end up with Han and Chewie.
Yep.
Then they would still end up in space, going to Alderaan, because that's where they're directed to, but Alderaan doesn't exist. So there's a moon there. Let's land on the moon.
Turns out
it's not a
they
moon.
get pulled in by the tractor beam.
Yeah.
It's the Death Star. What's this? It's massive. Oh god, death.
And then they're essentially captured.
Yeah.
So they're already infiltrating the Death Star. That story is still going to exist.
Yes. Up to that point, I've had a few little minor ideas of what might happen next, but up to that point where they get drawn into the Death Star, I think that would still work quite nicely.
What I think might change is when they escape. That's not the end of the film.
Yes.
I think some films would just go, "Yep, we saved the princess. We flew off into the
sunset.
Yeah.
With the tractor beam on the Millennium Falcon.
And that's the end of the story. But it doesn't end there. There is actually a whole bigger story where they have to now destroy the Death Star.
Yeah.
Now, if they with the plans, they know that if they fire a missile into the one weakness, the one weak spot in the whole thing, it would cause a catastrophic chain reaction and destroy the Death Star from within.
Yep.
Which is, spoiler alert, how they win the fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the difference is that if they don't know about that, it's pretty impenetrable to all sorts of laser fire, missile fire, whatever. You can't do enough damage. It's also massive.
It's also massive, and they said, isn't it? They can't. If they just launched an assault, the guns on the outside of the Death Star would destroy him. I think the reason why it worked so well is because they forced the X-Wings to go into the trenches.
Yeah, they go under radar level, essentially, don't they?
Yeah, so if they just... And I think they mentioned it, I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But I think they said, like, if we launch a full-scale assault and we don't just sort of go under the radar, we'll be destroyed. And most of them do get destroyed anyway.
Yeah, they do.
Fighting. Here's a question for you then. When Luke and Ben and Han go to save Leia, say for example she sent a message saying, I need some help, Darth Vader's got me, please can you help me?
Mm-hmm.
The Resistance needs me even though I haven't got the plans, blah blah blah. Do you think when Luke rescues her, she goes, right, we need to find a way to destroy this now? Because that's what I think Leia would probably do.
Yeah, probably, because we know she's a fierce and strong leader, and she will do anything. Like she's probably in that film, she's probably the most headstrong character there.
Oh yeah, everyone thinks it's Han Solo, but no. It's Leia.
He's just arrogant and cocky.
Yeah,
he's just a rogue. Whereas she's
a leader.
Yeah, she is exactly that, a leader.
Yeah, Well, she was grown up to be that anyway. When you watch Obi-Wan Kenobi, you know who her father has been, her surrogate father. You know, she was born and bred
exactly
to be that kind of leader thing. But I think she would. I think they would get her out of prison. They'd go and do the whole dumpster malarkey.
Yeah.
But instead of Ben, fighting Vader to let him escape with Leia with the plans, maybe Ben's idea would be, I'll stall Darth so you can get R2 to do his, prequel sort of shenanigans with his little USB drive, and scan the ship and maybe take the plans from the ship there and then. And if he can't encrypt it, maybe they could have a quick look around and go, right, the massive, kyber crystals down in the centre of the ship. If we can destroy that, then it will blow up. So they might come to the same conclusion. It's just how.
Yeah, where they do it.
Yeah. Because it's difficult to say that R2 could just sort of plug himself in and find the plans, because I don't think in episode 4 that would have happened.
No, I think
there's a proper prequel, plot armor type thing that R2 can do.
That said, though, when they're in the trash compactor,
R2 does do it then.
He has actually got he plugs straight into the plans. He finds them. He knows he surely, if he can find them there in the plans, he can find the entire plan.
But that's just the code for the doors. So what he's done, he's gone into the mainframe to look for the codes to open the doors. I don't know, with the time that he had, if he could download the entire ship's blueprint. But maybe he could have. And maybe they didn't do, because they already had the plans. That wasn't even thought about. But maybe if Ben did stall Vader for a bit longer, and R2 and 3PO didn't have to hide in that closet, maybe R2 could have downloaded them then. But I don't think they would have come to the conclusion that the vent's there, because they wouldn't have had. I don't know. It's sort of it would just be like, oh yeah, we didn't get the plans then, but we've got them now, so everything's the same. In my little headcanon eyes, it would have to be a bit different. So maybe while Ben was distracting Vader, they would have a look around. Maybe they could have a look at a mini blueprint somewhere. Not that Han's smart enough, so it'd have to be Leia saying, we need to check this ship for weaknesses. And maybe they see the crystal and then they plan a infiltration escapade to plant some bombs there, maybe. Don't know.
I think it would have to be infiltration. The weakness was brought to the attention of the rebels by Jen Erso.
Yeah.
So she would have to, if she's informed them in the first place before failing the mission, potentially, then perhaps they would know on the plans where to find it. But if that mission never went ahead and they never discovered the weakness, they wouldn't find it on the blueprints. Considering how huge it is and how much time they've got, you wouldn't be able to find that one tiny little exhaust port.
One little port, yeah.
What was it? A metre wide or something?
Yeah, something silly like that. It's just big enough for them specific torpedoes. It weren't for anything else.
So I think they would have to, inevitably, if they wanted to destroy the Death Star, it would have to be done from within. It would be a suicide mission.
Yeah.
The problem with that is, in the 70s, I don't think many films had suicide missions.
No.
Most films are happy endings.
Yeah.
Most films they're the bad guys. The good guys always win.
Yeah.
Very few die unless it's a heroic death.
Yeah.
An heroic death. Or it's done in a way that helps the good guys win. It's a sacrifice. It's done in that way. But a suicide mission
it's quite dark.
Is a dark way for what is essentially a kids' film.
A kids' sci-fi film to go, because it's supposed to be, Luke's friendly pilots die, but like you say, they die so Luke can save the day. It's not like they die and it's all in vain. Like, there's a happy end, and like straight after that, they're getting their medals and the music's nice. So it makes you forget that these lads have just died.
Well, it's they're collateral damage within war, aren't they? So they're expected. You're always going to expect people to die, but you don't. There's no true character development there, so you don't get attached to them.
This is it, yeah.
I mean, some people love those characters, but they're only in for minutes.
Yeah.
So they're not seen as a big loss, are they?
No.
When Ben Kenobi dies, he just disappears.
Yeah.
He's not even. You don't even see a body, do you? He just disappears because he's a space wizard.
He's a space wizard.
So I think the suicide mission theory would be the only viable way to do it. However, it probably wouldn't happen because of when the film would be made.
Yeah, we'd have to look at it as a different time frame for the film, because going back to Rogue One, they all died.
They did, yes,
and it was a sad ending. But that's because, like you say, the time in which that film was made, and the storyline sort of needed it to happen for chronological sort of garbage. But back then, it wouldn't have been done. No. So it would have to be, just look at it from, just freestyle with it. Let's say it was made today. It would have to be, maybe Luke would go.
Yeah.
But maybe it would force a fight with Darth Vader that ended differently, while some rebels were running around in stormtrooper gear trying to find the ladder down to the big laser crystal to plant some bombs on it, because they do use bombs and stuff, don't they? Or they would shoot a Gatling gun at it or something to sort of get it to overreact, and then it would be, you guys are not coming back. Or they could even do it like they did send a squad down there, and they've got one ship in the hangar bay, and then it would be one of those mad rush.
And they just get back into
rush to get back.
They've got a timer on the detonator
and stuff like that. Yeah, and Vader's rushing around trying to find it because he's figured it out and stuff, and it would be sort of a edge of your seat moment.
Yeah.
But that's probably the way they would do it. And like I say, if they had to save Leia, she would probably find the plans and be like, right, we can get to the core of the ship through this sort of hatchway and go down there without being seen. We can go through this evacuation vent or whatever and get to the centre of the Death Star this way, and then you've got 2 minutes to get back. If you don't get back, you're going to die. I need some volunteers kind of job.
Yeah.
Which makes for a very different episode 4 based on one little mishap in Rogue One.
Yeah, I think it continues the down feeling, doesn't it?
Yeah, the downtrodden. Yeah, like
it's all, but I think that's something that it makes sense when you see in Rogue One that they're rebels and they're fighting for their lives, essentially.
Yeah.
And yes, there's going to be losses, and there are going to be suicide missions, and there's going to be, people are going to die.
Yeah.
But it's the greater good.
It's the greater good. But I think that's good storytelling, because you can have light and dark and space wizards and stuff. And like you said before, that's like for kids. It's a kids' film. It's a kids' sci-fi that it's a happy ending, and you don't get attached to people who die to make it easier watching. But I think even in reality, you can't escape people failing.
No.
And not even by human error. It could be any error, or people dying. So I think however they went around it, people would still die anyway. And maybe it'd be more touching if a second group of people, they destroyed the Death Star, but they all died, and then you're going, oh my goodness me. Good job Luke's still on thingy with Yoda.
Oh yeah.
Just Luke had to go and see Yoda, so he's all right. But his little cronies who he shook hands with and stuff are all dead now. But they did manage to destroy it. But here's another question: what about the Rebel base? Because they know where they are.
Yeah.
Would they have been able to destroy it before the Death Star destroyed the base? Because that's the big thing as well at the end, isn't it? 2 minutes to launch, even though we could have just hyperdrive to the other side of the planet. But
where's the suspense in that?
Yeah, this is it. Yeah. So would it have then, because they didn't start the assault in space, and they had to infiltrate, which takes time,
Well, on the when they're on Dantooine, aren't they?
Yeah.
And when they're looking at their monitors, they've got a time that
Yeah,
shows
so
up, so they know
5 minutes till it breaks the curvature of the planet. Yeah.
until it becomes visible. If you were going to infiltrate that huge Death Star, and even though it's the smaller of the Death Stars, it's still massive. They mistake it for a moon. It's huge.
It's yeah.
You're not running
No.
in time. And even if you got in there and put a timer on the detonator to give yourself a chance to get out again, there's no way you're getting back to that hangar.
No. Not unless you had a magic teleport button, which just doesn't exist.
I think the reality is, bearing in mind there was no radio contact with those on the Death Star.
Yeah.
Because they didn't. Leia was the only person who had any contact with the rebels. The others had no contact whatsoever, and Leia didn't have a radio or a
little beep beep comms pen.
Yeah, she didn't have any of that. So the reality is that they would have had to have evacuated Dantooine.
Yeah.
To avoid being killed. Otherwise, and even if they evacuated, they would have destroyed Dantooine.
Oh yeah.
And I think that if they knew what any other rebel bases were, which they didn't, because when they interrogated Leia.
Oh yeah, they didn't find any, did they? The only reason they know Dantooine is because they put the tracker on the Millennium Falcon. That's how they know it's there, the rebel base.
Oh, was it not because I thought Leia said because they gave her the truth serum stuff, the little flying robot droid comes in, and then she talks. And I think that's how they know, and that's where they head off to.
Oh, I thought it was because Han went there, and I'm sure when they escape, Vader says to a trooper, have you put a tracking device on there? And they, yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, but that's... Yes. No, you're right. You are... I'm sure you must be right.
Because Ben dies, they put a tracker on the ship, they escape with Leia, after Luke goes, no! And then they go straight to Dantooine.
Yeah. And
then Vader's like, we will find them, and we will destroy the Rebel Alliance. Yeah. Because then as well, because they can tell when the Death Star's coming, so maybe they would say, right, yeah, like you say, we'll evacuate this rebel base.
Mm-hmm.
We'll send up a couple of people with some old codes, but they still check out.
Yeah.
Get onto the ship, dress up as a couple of stormtroopers, and then just try their best to get down there. Very intense, different film experience that. But
yeah, that's a proper infiltration, isn't it?
But that's if they destroy it at all. What if they never destroyed it? What if literally the rebels are just hiding and they're constantly trying to infiltrate the ship because they just don't know? Maybe the story would change that they would have to find somebody who knows about the port, and then it would just push back that fight, and the Death Star would have a couple more kills under its sleeve.
Yeah, it would take out quite a few planets. It would become like Star Killer Base, where it just zaps out 5 planets in one go.
Yeah,
because it can.
Because it can, and then they would just be a force to be reckoned with, wouldn't they?
Mm.
And then it would become a dire attempt, and Leia would probably just have what rebels she's got left on a ship, constantly hyperdriving everywhere to stay out of the way.
Yeah.
She wouldn't even go to a planet because they would just end up blowing it up, sort of thing.
Yeah, living in a flotilla.
Well, but basically, yeah, and just like they did in is it 8 or 9? Episode 8 or 9,
Yeah, when they're trying to escape, they've got the tracker on them.
Yeah.
And Kylo Ren's just staying in range.
Yeah.
But the rebels are short on fuel and they're desperate.
And all of that.
And then Leia flies in space.
When she would die straight away. That we just ignore that little bit of science. It's science fiction, okay? Not science facts. If it was science facts, I'd spit me popcorn right everywhere. But yeah, because I think that's I think that's quite a cool idea. That obviously I know there's supposed to be like a good ending, a happy ending, but the difficulty in getting onto the Death Star to infiltrate and then bomb the core which is the only other way they could potentially do it. That in itself is so difficult. The Death Star would be... They wouldn't need to build a second one, because that would be the menace for so long.
I think it's infiltrating. So when Han Solo, Chewie, Ben, and Luke, and the droids end up on the Death Star first time round, they're just brought in because they happen to be in the tractor beam range.
Yeah.
So it's easy for them to get on board.
Yeah, because they go looking for the moon, don't they? And then they just get pulled in straight away.
But they're not intentionally looking for the Death Star, so they're not really a threat.
Yeah, because do they...
They wouldn't be... They were brought in as suspicious.
Yeah.
And when they were landed, they were essentially apprehended, weren't they?
Yes.
If you were trying to infiltrate, that becomes much more difficult because you've got to have the right ship
and the right armor
and the right codes and the right people on board.
Yeah.
People who are able to infiltrate and
make up the cock and ball to get through security, basically.
Which is difficult.
Yeah, especially on them Imperial ships, because you see in was it Andor? Was it actually Andor or another one where they actually had proper security checkpoints?
They did. Yeah,
and they probably would have had that on the Death Star anyway. You just didn't see it because Luke got off the ship and they instantly had him in cuffs.
Yeah. I think if it was an infiltration, if that was how the story went, it'd be really interesting. I think it'd be a cool film. It'd become an action film, though.
Oh, it would be an action film.
It would sort of swap genres.
Yeah, it wouldn't be science fiction anymore. It would be, you'd have the Ben and Darth Vader fight in the corner.
Yeah.
But the main thing would
be Arnie versus Stallone in one corner.
Yeah, and then you'd have your Tom Clancy Mission Impossible-esque.
Yeah.
Running down the tube to get to the the core sort of thing.
It'd be an interesting film.
Oh yeah.
But it would change the tone of the whole thing.
It would change the tone, but also because the first time they go on that ship is when they save Leia. They'd, like you say, they'd have to get back on there. And it would be difficult. But I quite like the idea of them not having the plans and making it a bit more difficult for him. Because maybe Ben wouldn't let himself to be killed. Maybe Ben would be like, right, I'm the only one here who's a proper Jedi. I know I'm old, but maybe if I can get down there and show that the Jedi are still powerful enough, maybe, just maybe, I can get somewhere near the core, find something I can do. Because he's smart, because he's done so much in the Clone Wars, and I know we don't know that by Episode 4, but sort of by Rogue One, with what's been released, you have an idea that Obi-Wan Kenobi, he sort of knows his stuff. He knows what he's doing. Even though Alec Guinness plays a sort of older wizardy type man, he would still have that knowledge to maybe go, right, Vader's after me. I've got minimal time here. I'm going to sort of head down. I'm going to use the Force to guide me, and then maybe I'll just plunge me saber into something that looks dangerous, and just hope that even if it just slows the ship down, because then the rebels would have a better chance
of escaping.
Maybe he shuts down all of the outer guns, and then they do a normal assault anyway.
I think the issue with that line there is Obi-Wan sacrificed himself so Luke.
Because of Luke and Leia.
So Luke can see that that's the path he needs to take.
Yeah.
He needs to understand about sacrifice. But also, Ben doesn't really know about the Death Star plans.
No.
He knows they exist. Well, no, he knows Leia needed some help. He doesn't actually know they exist. So he doesn't know that there's a weakness. He doesn't know that the rebels are going to launch an attack on the Death Star.
No, that's all true. But you think if Darth Vader was there, he would know it's a bad ship.
Oh, he knows it's bad because he recognises the stormtroopers and
and all of that sort of thing. So, but maybe, maybe he doesn't want to destroy it or actually find information about it. Maybe he just thinks, right, Luke and Han can save Leia. Mm-hmm. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slow this bad boy down, and then I'll fight Vader, and it will still end up the same. But maybe he'll just instead of destroying the tractor beam, maybe he goes, right, what I'll do is I'll do the tractor beam. Oh, what's that button over there? That might just, disable the hyperdrive for 2 days.
Yeah.
And then that will change then, because like you say, when they find Leia, then Leia would be like, right, we need to do something about this. Ben, sadly, with his life, cost us an extra day or two.
But like the Bothans later on,
yeah,
they lost their lives to bring them the news.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, his sacrifice could potentially buy the time that they need to build up a plan.
Yeah, and even like they say, if it's a frontal assault, because the assault on it is forced by them, the Death Star coming out of hyperspace, isn't it? And then they go, oh, right, we need to act now. We've got X minutes before it turns around the circumference of the Earth.
Yeah.
Maybe they would say, right, we know where it is. It's in the system here, where this planet used to be. Let's take our force and get out there, catch them off guard, and maybe just be luck. One little ship can get in, and they can just sort of like fire a torpedo inside somewhere. Maybe it will hit a pipe that will cause a reaction or something. I mean, that's clutching at straws, and it wouldn't make very good storytelling if it was just like crash the ship and throw grenades everywhere and see what happens sort of thing.
Yeah.
But, or maybe, I don't know, maybe because a bit later on, Luke finds Vader on there, and it's in another film. It's still the Death Star 1, not Death Star 2.
Yeah.
Maybe Luke fights Vader, and then when Vader, sacrifices himself for Luke to live and redempts him and stuff, maybe Vader just goes, do you know what? It's down there. I'm done.
Yeah, I've had enough.
I've had enough now. Just destroy the ship. Believe me on it. Captain goes down with the ship. I've thrown Palpatine off. You lads can set a timer here and get off.
Yeah.
Go on, son. Leave. But do you know what I mean, though?
Yeah.
So maybe
it could still be the hero.
Yeah. So maybe the Death Star 2 would never be built. It would just be Death Star 1. It's caused some mayhem. And in their desperate attempt, after getting Han back from Jabba and all of the other storylines, Luke would still go and face Vader and be like, right, we need to stop this menace. And then it happens the same anyway, and they just blow it up and all fly off happy families. That's another avenue. But obviously that's a lot of time of the original Death Star being that force to be reckoned with. And like we said before, the rebels would be able to have a base. They'd probably be in a flotilla, escaping time and time and time again. Because even on Hoth, it's a nice planet. And they still land there in force and realise they're there. How do they know?
Yeah. Something happens in between 4 and 5, but they suddenly land there.
Yeah. And all them 80...
It's probably just where they send all those recon droids.
Yes. Do they send them to every system?
They must send them to every system, yeah, and they just happen.
I can't remember.
It's just by pure luck, because it comes across Han, doesn't it? Or is it Luke?
It's Han, because then he shoots it.
Yeah,
with his pistol.
But by that point, it's probably too late. The transmission's sent, and it's...
Oh no, they don't send them to every system. Don't they send them to certain systems where they think there's bases?
Oh, okay.
And then they send them off. Yeah. So this is the thing. They would have to be in a flotilla, or they'd be losing men and women by the thousands. And then,
but that's risky because if you've got limited fuel, limited resources, you've got to land somewhere, or somebody's got to land.
Yeah.
And if you land in the wrong place, and because the rebels at that point know that there's no stronghold for them, they actually have a weaker position.
Yeah.
Maybe the Imperials take over more planets, which makes it more difficult for any rebellion. Even if you sent down a small ship to gather supplies, they just get stopped at a checkpoint, and then they're in trouble.
That's it, and there'd be no Jedi to sort of...
And it would be kind of...
wave them out of trouble, would there?
Yeah, it would just be a creeping death at that point, wouldn't it? They would slowly die out, not because necessarily they're getting blown up, but because their lack of resource, the lack of fuel just means that they're essentially lost in space.
Yeah, sitting ducks.
Yeah.
And then they'd get caught up with anyway.
Yeah.
Especially if they're sending probes out into a few systems. They would...
Yeah, eventually that would be it.
Yeah. Oh, it's... Yeah. Because we started to base this on, the ending of Rogue One.
Yeah.
But actually, what's happened is 4, 5, and 6 is what it affects.
Oh yeah, it does. It does everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, even 7, 8, and 9, because if the Death Star was never destroyed, it would just be. Why would they build Starkiller Base?
Well, they wouldn't have to, would they?
They wouldn't have to. It would just be.
But at that point, the story wouldn't change. The films would all just be, here's a Death Star destroying another planet.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Luke's destroyed Vader, but a new guy in a black suit has taken over the Death Star because they just can't delete it off the face of the earth.
I think when we first discussed this idea, it seemed like if they didn't get the plans, that the Death Star would just wipe everything out, and that would be the end of the story, and that'd be quite dull because it would just there wouldn't be any.
There's no hope.
There's no hope, and that's all. It's all built on hope.
Yeah.
But when we started talking about the infiltration idea, that actually breathes life into something.
Yeah.
You've got that hope, and it might be a struggle, and it will be a struggle, and people will die.
But it is something which can be achieved in a story.
Yeah. In a fictional story,
because it's a fictional story,
one person needs to successfully plant one bomb, one little charge somewhere.
Yeah.
Even if they don't survive, the Death Star ends and the story continues.
Yeah. Even if it's an extra film later, and they go straight from Death Star 1 to Starkiller Base, because like I said before, it takes a couple of films to destroy it, but. Yeah, you think because the other storylines would stay the same. Luke's storyline may stay the same. He's obviously not the hero that killed the Death Star, but he would still finish his training with Yoda. He would still, fight Vader, go and see Jabba, because Vader could still take Han and say, do you know what, we'll give him the Jabba, because I want the, I want the respect of the mob boss.
Yeah.
And even though Anakin used to know him and stuff like that from the Clone Force, it's not like they're not estranged. But yeah, and Ben's sacrifice, I know I said before that he might go off and help him out a little bit more, but Ben's sacrifice would be the same. He'd still have to sacrifice himself to get Leia off the ship in the first film. And actually it would probably add a bit more to the sadness of Rogue One, because it would mean their sacrifice, it would actually be in vain.
Yes.
Until Luke was ready, because it's not like it's.
Yeah, it would be a total downer, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because
with zero hope.
You would remember that they gave their lives to try and do that mission, and they failed that.
Yeah.
And now Leia's failing because she can't find a way to deal with it. And who else is left? Nobody.
Yeah, the only thing they get out of Rogue One is the knowledge that it exists.
Yep.
But not the knowledge of how to destroy it.
That's it, yeah.
So they would have all the terror,
but no idea of what to do.
Yeah, but no hope.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think in the Andor series, like I said, but I've said a little bit about this before to you, they're in that prison. They are actually building parts for the Death Star, aren't they? That's why they're in prison, and that's it's just manual labour. But obviously Andor doesn't know that.
No.
And I think he clocks it in Rogue One, and he sort of starts to realise, he doesn't really say anything about it, but I'm sure in his head, after knowing that he's made an Andor series after Rogue One, that he's been there and he's done that, and that also makes it sad, because he's then going,
I've contributed to that.
I had friends in that prison who died to help build something which is destroying, millions and millions of lives, and yeah, it would just be such a downer, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah.
It wouldn't be science fiction.
It wouldn't be that. It wouldn't be a New Hope anymore. It'd just be a new terror.
It would just be a new downer, a new emo. But yeah. But there's so many avenues you could go. Because if Vader was certain that the Rogue One film sort of team like Jen Erso and that was gonna fail,
yeah,
maybe then that film would change, and he wouldn't have even bothered invading because he'd just go, "I'll just bomb it from space because they haven't got the plans because I've hidden them away." And then he wouldn't, and then that film would change because he wouldn't be at the end doing his amazing stuff.
No,
because he wouldn't need to go there if he knew that they had failed, because it's all based on what Vader knows, because he's obviously the man of the hour. If he knew they'd failed, he'd be like, all right, bomb them. Let's chip off. Let's save ourselves. We don't need to have loads of stormtroopers dying for no reason. Let's just bomb them. Get going. Wall up. Back off you go.
Yeah.
And then it's the same thing again. Maybe he wouldn't capture Leia.
He probably wouldn't need to.
He wouldn't need to, would he? Because he knows there's rebels around, but he'd just go, they haven't got the... I don't think they've got the plans, so...
Yeah, and he doesn't know that he's got a connection to Leia.
That's it. He has no clue, and he doesn't have to go looking for her now.
No.
Because if he's certain they haven't got the plans, he can go, we'll just use the Death Star to... Well, I know it wasn't built back then, but we can use the Death Star to do what we want now.
Yeah.
And we've got power, and the rebels will probably give up. And that's basically what it is, because Palpatine's telling him. But again, all stems from Palpatine. He's only doing all that crap because Palpatine's sort of scratching the back of his neck, telling him to do it.
Yeah.
If Palpatine was so scared about the rebels, maybe he would send Vader after him anyway, but I can't really see it if they don't have the plans.
No, if they didn't have knowledge, if they didn't have anything on them, then what's the point? It's just wasted effort, isn't it?
They would have just bombed it,
Yeah.
or sent a couple of shore troopers down, and that would have been that. But, I can't see the full scale attack that happened, which then would make for a bit of a rubbish ending, because they sacrificed themselves to try and get the plans, which didn't work.
Yeah.
But then the ending wouldn't be this massive cool fight with a lot of fields.
No, the whole thing you're waiting for.
It would just be it would just trickle out down the stream.
Yeah.
And then the film would end, and you go, oh, the ending was a bit rubbish.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it a bit more from that, but yeah, it's not good storytelling, is it?
I think that's always the problem when you sort of try and reimagine the story. Quite often,
it stops being a story because it's just
it kills everything later on. It stops it dead, and that's it.
Yeah. It's like an alternate storyline when you play a game on your Xbox or whatever. You're like, I'll finish the main story. I'm going to play this version of it just to see. But it's never going to be the same.
I think it makes it different if you were looking at one film in isolation. Like we're looking at 9 films essentially.
Yeah.
11 if you include the 2 spin-offs.
Yeah.
If you looked at one film in isolation and the ones after never existed, changing the storyline in that one film, giving it an alternate ending is that's just how it ends, and that's how it is, and that's still quite cool.
And it's still exciting to watch.
Yeah,
but because we know
it's got to continue.
Yeah.
Then actually you think, well, those next films are not going to be as good.
And we touched on this in a little bonus episode, didn't we? Every film's made because of the film before it.
Yeah.
So Rogue One is made because of these other films.
Yes.
So, and it actually helps people answer the questions that they wanted answering. But how could they have, thinking about that, if Rogue One was to fail, they wouldn't, so this is like physical copies of films here, they wouldn't have been able to go back and retcon them films.
No.
So it had to work the way it did in order for 4, 5 and 6 to work as it did.
Yeah,
and even 7, 8, 9, because it impacts that as well with the Death Star crashing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's quite good to think about these things though, because another avenue is, all right, they didn't get the plans off, but what if Andor survived? Because we know he's a bit of a badass,
He's a shady character.
He's a shady character, but we kind of love him. He's difficult to love, but we do love him for good reason. They didn't get the plans off, but a few of them survived. They joined the Rebel Alliance, and then they go, well, we have kind of seen the plans just because we didn't get them to you. Like, we know this thing's being built. We need to think of a plan now and catch them off guard, maybe before it's ready. You know, obviously it's kind of ready and stuff when the film comes around. But you know, it would have a similar outcome, but a very different storyline with Andor working with Leia. You know, maybe it's Andor that goes to save Leia from Darth Vader. You know, because he's already got that experience, whereas Luke's just a kid.
Yeah, he's just thrown into it, isn't he?
Thrown into it. Maybe Luke and Ben just sort of, he goes, oh, well, you know, your father was Anakin Skywalker. Why don't you stay here with me for a couple of months and we'll train up a bit, you know, get your levels up, experience boost and all that. You know, and then Andor's up there doing the biz. He's saving Leia, having a little snog, and then, like, they're getting out, and he goes, I know you didn't get the plans, and I'm sorry, but I'm here, and we're going to destroy this thing. Yeah. Imagine a film where it's like Leia and Andor, like double team, double kicking. You know,
that would be a good film. I think that'd be quite good, like a nice little twosome there.
Yeah, because you know it doesn't have to be full on action. It can still be that desperate attempt.
Yeah,
you know, because Andor's quite a sour, dour person.
Yeah, he is,
and he's been through a lot. And Leia's quite bossy and whippy. You would have that dynamic.
They would be arguing and bickering constantly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And she would be at wit's end with him because he would just be like, "You can't do it." And she'd be like, we have to try. And then he'd end up trying.
Yeah.
And then maybe he would die. So maybe Andor's storyline would have to end anyway.
Yes.
And it would be made with the Death Star.
That would actually be quite... If they did an infiltration and Andor happened to be there and he ended up dying...
I think that's a good story arc for him.
That actually becomes quite a nice way to do it, isn't it?
Because I just think it's a bit badass. So if they survived, you know, not every member of the Thieves Guild there would have to survive, because some people have to die for feels, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, if Andor, you know, survived, and what's her face, Jenna, yeah. You know, if she survived as well, you know, instead of Han, Leia and Luke, it would be Leia, Jenna and Andor, you know, and it would be a different kind of film because of Luke's storyline, but maybe, you know, you would touch on Luke later because Andor died in episode 4 maybe, but Leia was still able to destroy the Death Star in a different way, because there's still story writing. The Death Star had to be destroyed, and it just doesn't matter how or who, but it had to be destroyed for them to start Death Star 2.
Yes.
To then freeze Han Solo and Carbonite and send them off, and for Luke to go and find Jabba and go back to see Yoda. It all happens because the Death Star gets destroyed.
Yeah.
And then Luke's able to breathe for a minute, join the rebels, and go see Yoda again.
Yeah, learn some skills. Skills with a Z.
But yeah, so there's two big avenues there, and one of them's just actually quite sad if the Death Star stays, you know, standing, and it just manages to smash face. But
well, I'd be interested to hear what listeners think.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah,
and see if they have any ideas how they'd like to see the story pan out if they fail to get the plans.
Yeah, because we've focused in this chat talking about, you know, our ideas on how it could go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it'd be nice to have somebody outside the box going, well, actually, if they didn't get the plans, then maybe this would happen.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear stories or ideas, you know, advice, whatever you've got.
Any alternate ideas any listeners got, we're keen to hear them.
Yeah.
And we will revisit.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And we'll see what we think, and hopefully, you know, we can share some more interesting ideas.
Yeah, and then add to them and discuss and all sorts of things. Yeah.
Right. Well, with that being said,
all done, are we?
I think that's a good place to end.
Cool.
And so thanks for listening.
Yeah, have a good one.
Get in touch. We're all the information's in the show notes. Find us on Instagram. Send us an email. But until next time, look after yourself.
Yeah, be good.
And stay out of the sand.
Okay.